DFS community. Welcome into the Week 8 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play into the trenches to determine game script and player outcomes. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at Todzilla1337. And you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks. Week 8, we're actually coming at you Friday evening here. No Saturday morning update. I usually like to wait till Saturday to get all of the injury news, but we're going at it right now. Friday evening, trying to get you the information a little bit earlier. I got some personal life things going on Saturday, so here it comes today. Get it out for you guys a little bit earlier. Anyway, we're going to get into it. Last week, highly successful. Absolutely smashed it. Was all over New York Giants defense, which helped. And then getting a lot of really cheap Jackson Smith and Jigba. And Chicago run game there could not be beat with Foreman absolutely smashing. He was in a lot of the lineups there. So very, very successful week last week. If you didn't catch the Thursday night video yesterday, go take a peek at that. It's Thursday Night Theories, where we explain how to interpret what we see in the Adjusted Line Play Report and what is likely going to happen in that particular game. So doing so very good in those island games. Yesterday I was 90th overall in one of the tournaments that I was in, and setting up some pretty good lineups there. I believe I was in the top 5% and a couple of the other lineups in a different full spectrum, full boat, large field tournament over on DraftKings. So very highly successful last week. So let's see if we can reproduce that. That's really what it's all about on the Adjusted Line Play Report here, getting you a little bit of additional information so you can make better decisions about what you need to do in your lineup for the week. All right, let's get into it. Week 2 here. We got some interesting games, a lot of very low totals. So the highest one on the slate, again, no buys this week. So 13 game main slate, 12 game main slate, I believe, or 13 game main slate. So it's a lot of games here. Getting into it, really low totals in some of these games. So we might just breeze over those if there's not any real good plays in those games. Anyway, 13 game main slate. We'll get into the island games for Sunday night and Monday night as well. But as usual, we're going to go from highest game total from Vegas all the way down. And actually this week we have 2 of them tied for 47 overall, Vegas game total. We'll get into that one first. Kansas City heading into Denver. Kansas City 7-point road favorites. Again, tied for first at 47 overall Vegas game total. Kansas City 27 team implied total. Second best on the slate. Denver 20 team implied total. 14th best on the slate. Getting into the away team. Kansas City offensive pass protection number 1. Denver 27th in the pass rush. So don't expect Kansas City to be getting sacked a whole lot by Denver's defense. Getting into the DVOA, Kansas City number 4, Denver 32nd in the offensive pass DVOA, telling us Kansas City should not only have a lot of time to throw, but they should be very explosive on their plays. Going to be good for the entire pass game here. Not much else to write home about there. Kelsey is usually the go-to person in a game where Kansas City is throwing the ball. Obviously, he's basically their number 1 target, but in a situation like this where it's just wide open, there should be plenty of options. Kelsey's probably going to be fine, but there might be some other options in Kansas City's pass game that end up being very successful and kind of reduce Travis Kelce's ceiling this week. So keep that in mind. Could be a little bit different week for him. He's probably going to be fine, but in terms of tournaments, could be fading him just because everybody else might be doing so well against this Denver defense. Who would benefit from that? MVS is certainly in play. He's their deep play threat. We saw him do well last week. That's an interesting one. I don't think Watson's back yet, Justin Watson. And in his place, we've seen Rashee Rice get a lot of run in the pass game there, so he's certainly viable. But Kansas City, bunch of options there, but pass catchers, I'm looking at Kelsey. I'm probably looking at Rashee Rice and maybe MVS as a dart throw in this particular game. But that pass game should be very good. Getting into the run blocking side, Kansas City number 23 in run blocking, Denver number 7. So I'd expect Isaiah Pacheco to be getting stuffed or hit at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage a little bit more often than you'd like if he's in your fantasy lineups. Again, he did all right against Denver the last time that they met about 2 weeks ago. Getting into the run DVOA, Kansas City 21st, Denver 31st. This is indicative that Kansas City might get some explosive runs, but they're probably also going to be a lot of situations where they're, negative yardage or below the line or behind the line of scrimmage in terms of some of those rush attempts. But if they do get beyond that, some of those plays might be a little bit more explosive. So that's kind of what this run DVOA is suggesting. Pacheco just fine, but probably avoiding him in tournaments unless you think Kansas City is going to be up so big in this game based off of the Vegas line that he gets a lot of run. Probably not going to be the case, though. Put him in your seasonal leagues. I think he'll be just fine in that, but probably not going to be in the tournament-winning lineup for you this week. Getting into the Denver side, they are the home team. They're 23rd in offensive pass protection, Kansas City 13th. And then Denver 16th in pass DVOA, Kansas City number 4. This is in the favor of Kansas City's defense. They should be able to pressure Russell Wilson in this. It's going to require a little bit quicker throws, a little bit more stuff underneath, probably heading to the tight ends, heading to the running backs, and some of those underneath routes for the Denver offense there. I'm not entirely sure between the wide receivers who's running those quicker routes, if it's Jared Jeudy or Sutton or who it is, but a lot of times if the quarterback's getting pressured, you'll see a lot more passes go to the tight end and to the running backs here. And from Denver, in terms of the running backs, we've seen Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine really be the beneficiaries there. It doesn't look like they trust the rookie there yet, Jaleel McLaughlin, in the pass game, so don't expect him to have a very good outcome in terms of the passes in that regard. So Denver in run blocking, number 27, Kansas City 29th in stopping the run. Run DVOA, Denver 12th, Kansas City 21st. This is a pretty even matchup. Run DVOA a little bit better there for Denver, which is based off of this whole picture telling me that Denver is going to be a little bit more successful running the ball on the ground than they will be in the air. Unfortunately for them, Kansas City looks like they'll be able to pass at will on them. The run game might struggle, but yeah, that's something to kind of take into consideration. Denver should be moving the ball a little bit better on the ground. Javonte Williams is probably the one person from Denver I'd be interested in running it back with this Kansas City team. And that's only because he's likely to get some dump-off passes. We've seen his target share be pretty good there in the running back room. So keep that in mind. Pace of play is kind of slow here. Denver kind of plays slow no matter what. Kansas City, 26 in overall pace of play, but that's kind of, end of the road. But their neutral situation pace of play is 7th. So when things are close, they play a little bit faster. I think when they get the lead and things like that, they play a little bit slower. When they do have a lead of 7 or more points here, they're middle of the pack, but that they do lead by that amount pretty frequently, which probably reduces their overall pace of play there into the red. So really, middle of the pack to maybe high end, depending on the situation. But yeah, I don't know about this game hitting the over. Kansas City should be good here. The run game makes me a little bit concerned if they're not going to be able to pick up some of these short yardage situations. This might be a situation where the Kansas City kicker comes into play for your leagues. Obviously, he's probably taking in a lot of them, but if you have the option to pick who your starting kicker is, he should have a very good week this week based off of these numbers typically. Pass game is very, very good, which means they might move the ball and score anyway. But a lot of times, if those drives are going to stall out, it's because this run game isn't quite as good. But they will be getting into scoring position quite frequently. Anyway, that's going to do it for the first top game on the slate. The next one is New England heading into Miami with the exact same 47-point Vegas game total. We have a 9.5-point line here. Miami are the favorite at home. 28.25 team implied total for Miami. That is best on the slate. New England, 18.75 team implied total. This is good for 21st on the slate. All right, getting into the New England side, they're number 6 in offensive pass protection, which means they're not taking a lot of sacks. Miami number 2 in defensive pass rush, which means they are getting a lot of sacks. Kind of immovable force meets the impenetrable wall, whatever the saying is. There's nothing really to write home about there. The pass DVOA for New England, though, 22nd, which means they're not super efficient through the air. They're just not giving up a lot of sacks. And then Miami, 24th in defensive pass DVOA. Again, this is even up. What this means is studs eat in the pass situation, or the passing scenario, or where they want to go with the ball is usually where it's going to end up going. It seems like this historically, this season with Juju out has been going to Kendrick Bourne, and as of late, the running back there, Ramondre Stevenson, they're probably the biggest beneficiaries of this particular matchup. Just keep that in mind. There's nothing really to write home about there for New England, though. On the run blocking side, that's a little bit more nefarious. New England 25th in run blocking, Miami 1st in stopping the run, which means there's probably going to be a lot of behind the scrimmage action when there is runs. New England, though, 16th in offensive run DVOA, Miami 25th. Similar to the last game, New England probably, if they do get out of those situations where they're not getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, a little bit more effective, a little bit more efficient on the ground. Again, this is going to benefit Ramondre Stevenson as the person that's getting the bulk of the carries there. But really not anybody that I'm going to be interested on the New England side in terms of tournament plays unless they're really cheap. Stevenson and maybe Bourne are the biggest ones that I'd be looking into this week. On the Miami side, they're number 5 in offensive pass protection, New England 27th. So not taking a lot of sacks here from Miami, not generating a lot of sacks from New England. Should have time in the pocket. Offensive pass DVOA, Miami number 3, New England 23rd on defense. This is suggestive that Miami should have plenty of time to throw. They're going to be highly explosive based off of this info. Obviously, that's going to benefit Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I think that should be very good on their end. No different than what you'd already expect from this Miami team. On run blocking, though, Miami number 18, New England 15th. Miami number 1 in the run DVOA, New England number 9. This is a pretty even matchup, which means, hey, your studs are going to eat. We did see Mostert be very successful against New England a few weeks ago or earlier in the season. I think he had 121 yards and a touchdown, or maybe 2 touchdowns in that game. Certainly seems like he is a stud in this system. This is probably indicative that that's going to continue. Along with this pass game being very effective, I think Miami should be able to score quite a few points in here. New England, though, probably going to be okay through the air and not so great on the ground there. So New England moving the ball pretty effectively in the air, potentially stalling out in the maybe in the field goal range. New England kicker certainly in play here. Well, I think Miami should just be able to move the ball at will and be just fine on the ground. They should score a lot of points in this matchup. All right, so that's the first 2 games tied for first on the slate. Let's get into the third one here, which was Los Angeles at Dallas. I think these are 2 good offenses here going at it. So Los Angeles going into Dallas. Dallas are the 6-point home favorites. Vegas game total dropped 1.5 here to 45.5 total, third best on the slate. This gives Dallas a 25.75 team implied total, fourth best on the slate. Los Angeles 19.75, 16th on the slate. Getting into that Los Angeles side, they're number 18 in offensive pass protection, Dallas 21st in the pass rush, and then pass DVOA for Los Angeles number 11, Dallas number 3. Dallas not really giving up explosive plays there in the pass game, but also not generating a lot of sacks in scenarios where you wouldn't expect them to generate sacks. So if you're up 40 points and it's 3rd down and 12, obviously that's a situation where you would expect a sack to happen. So if you get it, it's not going to be worth as much as a sack in a situation perhaps where the other team is up by 20 and it's 1st and 10 and they drop back to pass it. That's maybe not a scenario where they're normally passed. And if you get a sack in that situation, it's going to count for a little bit more. So it's probably why you see Dallas's pass rush there at 21, despite being pretty effective this season on the overall pass DVOA, as you see at number 3. So keep that in mind. Sack rate here versus how effective the pass offense and defenses are with the DVOA. Really, what this is telling me, Puka and Cup there should be just fine in this particular matchup. That's kind of the studs eat scenario. So they should dominate again on that front in terms of target share. Los Angeles offensive run blocking, number 8. Dallas 15th in stopping the run. Los Angeles 5th in offensive run DVOA. Dallas number 10. We did see I said that last week. Darrell Henderson get the bulk of the work last week. Royce Freeman secondary after that, and really no one else besides those two getting any action. I would expect a very similar process this week. Probably Henderson getting the majority of the work, Freeman mixing in with pretty decent amount of volume, and being fairly effective based off of this. This is telling me Los Angeles should be fine moving the ball. Pass game isn't super duper great, but it's also not a super duper negative. They should be fine there. They got some studs and they can move the ball just fine. The run blocking looks to be slightly in the favor of the Rams, so they should be just fine sustaining drives for lengthy amounts of time. So keep that in mind. Los Angeles should be fine. Good game for them in general on offense. Getting into the Dallas side, number 14 in offensive pass protection. Rams, they're 24th in the defensive pass rush. Again, adjusted sack rates here in the favor of Dallas. Pass DVOAs, Los Angeles 20, Dallas number 19. Based off of this, they shouldn't be getting sacked a whole ton, and the DVOA metrics pretty even up. So somebody like CeeDee Lamb should be just fine in this. We've seen Gallup really take hold, and Ferguson in terms of the last few games that Dallas has played, and be involved in the pass game pretty heavily, which is probably just going to continue with a matchup like this. Getting into that Dallas side, number 6 on offensive run blocking, Rams 20th. And then the run DVOA is Dallas number 25, Los Angeles number 24. This is telling me Dallas should be getting positive yardage on most of their runs. They're not going to be getting blasted behind the line of scrimmage as often. They just might not be super explosive as the 25 suggests, but also Los Angeles hasn't been very good in stopping the run. Even up, I think Tony Pollard eats in a scenario like this. We may see him pop off and finally have one of those really good games this week where he's continually getting positive yardage, and then every once in a while he's just going to, outdo any of those defenders from Los Angeles and pop one off. I think he is a very intriguing play in terms of a tournament this week for a running back. I'm not sure what the running back slate looks like. I haven't looked at the prices or anything, but he should certainly be in play along with the usual pass weapons there in Dallas. All right, let's get on to the number 4 game on the slate. Baltimore heading into Arizona. It's a late afternoon game. Scrolling quite a bit. We got all those games this week, no buys. All right, we actually have Baltimore going into Arizona as 9.5-point road favorites. 44.5 Vegas game total. That gives Baltimore a 27 team implied total, which is second best on this slate. Arizona 17.5-point team implied total, 23rd best on the slate. Again, there's 13 games, so 23rd is one of the bottom 4 this week for team totals. Getting into that Baltimore side, number 20 in offensive pass protection, Arizona number 9 at the defensive pass rush, so they have been pretty successful at getting sacks. Baltimore not super great at not giving up sacks, so Arizona may generate a few sacks here, but the offensive pass DVOA completely flip-flop. Baltimore number 8, so highly explosive, very good overall on pass offense. Arizona 31st. So this is indicative that, sure, Baltimore might take a few additional sacks compared to what you'd expect, but overall that pass game is going to be pretty successful and be able to air it out. You just might come with a few hiccups here and there where they take an additional sack, and maybe that ends a drive early here or there during that particular game. But overall, this should be very explosive. I think, again, that's going to be good for Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers, especially if they're going to be getting after the quarterback a little bit, generating that pressure. Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews seem to be the best at operating underneath in this particular offense. And obviously the rest of that comes from Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr., but they're not really people that are going to pop off in a matchup this year, seemingly, for that team. The run blocking side, number 12 for Baltimore's offense, 14th for Arizona defense. Pretty even there, but Baltimore, number 2 in the run DVOA, Arizona 29th in the run DVOA. And this is kind of indicative that offensive line, defensive line stalemate. It's pretty average in terms of are they going to get hit behind the line of scrimmage or generate positive yardage. The explosiveness is where it comes into play. Baltimore should be pretty explosive in the run game, especially against this Arizona defense, which does give it up in the run game. This is probably very beneficial for Lamar Jackson, especially if they're going to be up. You might see a big Gus Edwards week where, maybe they're just driving the field, very successful, in the pass game, cranking it out in the run game. They get down to the goal line a few times, and you see Gus Edwards with one of those 80 or 90 rushing yard games and 2 or 3 touchdowns as they got close to the goal line and just pounded it in, especially if Baltimore is going to be leading in this game as Vegas is predicting. Getting into the Arizona side, number 16 in offensive pass protection. Baltimore, number 3 in the defensive pass rush, so they're generating a lot of sacks. Arizona, middle of the pack in terms of pass protection and giving up sacks. Baltimore, number 1 defense in pass DVOA, Arizona 18th. This is telling me that Arizona might be in trouble, especially if they are behind and big early on. Baltimore could be a very good defense this week with tons of sacks, generating a lot of pressure there. Probably some errant throws and potentially pick sixes and strip sacks. So wouldn't be surprised to see Baltimore defense score, in the teens on defense this week. With this information given in the projected Vegas line, Baltimore number 12 in stopping the run, Arizona 31st. So you should see a lot of at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage runs on Arizona's part. But the run DVOA, number 7 for Baltimore, number 7 for Arizona. This is telling me Arizona might struggle a little bit compared to what they're used to running the ball. They're going to probably struggle in the pass game. In theory, Baltimore should dominate this matchup against Arizona. Defense is obviously in play with this, and wouldn't be super interested in the Arizona pass catchers here unless it's maybe Rondale Moore operates underneath pretty extensively. They might be dumping him off to the running back quite frequently as well. So keep that in mind. Probably not grabbing any Arizona players in DFS tournaments, but Baltimore players certainly viable. Gus Edwards, dart throw. Lamar should be a very good tournament play. I think he can go off. And then Andrews and Flowers would be the big beneficiaries in the pass game if they're scoring points through the air. All right, that's the 4th best game. We have 4 games tied for the 5th best on the slate. Just so we're not scrolling everywhere, we'll go to Cincinnati at San Francisco first. The other games that we have on the slate that are tied for 5th best: New Orleans at Indianapolis, Houston at Carolina, and Philadelphia at Washington are the other ones tied for 5th best at 43.5. Vegas game total there. That's as of Friday evening or Friday afternoon here. So getting into the Cincinnati-San Francisco game, we have San Francisco as 4-point home favorites with that 43.5 Vegas game total. Again, tied for 5th best on the slate. That gives San Francisco a 23.75 team implied total, 6th best on the slate. Cincinnati is 19.75 team implied total, 16th best game on the slate, or team total on the slate. Getting into that Cincinnati side, they're number 5 in offensive pass protection, so not taking a ton of sacks there. San Francisco 13th in generating a pass rush or getting sacks in scenarios where you wouldn't expect it. So I wouldn't expect a ton of sacks here on Cincinnati's offense. Getting into the pass DVOA, though, Cincinnati number 25, San Francisco 5th overall in pass DVOA. Really, this is indicative that Cincinnati is not going to be very explosive in the pass game, despite not getting sacked. So they're going to have to probably dink and dunk against this San Francisco offense to move the ball very effectively. I wouldn't expect any huge chunk gains necessarily. That could be good for PPR settings, maybe Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase end up with quite a few more receptions as the plays aren't super explosive and they get more of that stuff underneath, leading to a few more receptions, but a lower yards per reception, if that makes sense. Getting into the run blocking side, Cincinnati number 18, San Francisco number 5. Heavily in favor of San Francisco's offense there. I'd expect Cincinnati to be getting stuffed at the line or maybe taking some losses on a lot of carries in this particular matchup. Run DVOA is a little bit closer, 22nd for Cincinnati's offense, 20th for San Francisco's defense. Really what this is saying is that Cincinnati, getting stuffed and probably not going to be super explosive, just an average game there. I don't think Mixon is a stud, and we haven't seen him go off, so he's probably in a void for any tournaments for me. And it sounds like he's going to be popular anyway, which is strange. San Francisco's defense, pretty solid, and we haven't really seen Mixon perform all that well this season as of yet. So if Cincinnati's going to be moving the ball, it's likely going to be a little bit better scenario through the air. So keep that in mind. That's the route that I would attack in Cincinnati this week. For San Francisco, they're 25th in offensive pass protection. Cincinnati number 10. This is indicative that San Francisco might take some sacks. We do have Brock Purdy out, so keep that in mind. It's going to be Sam Darnold under center in this particular game. But yeah, Cincinnati pretty good at generating a pass rush, getting sacks here. San Francisco hasn't been great at avoiding sacks necessarily so far, so interesting there. Cincinnati's pass DVOA close to top 10 at number 11, but San Francisco number 1 overall pass DVOA. Really indicative that they're very efficient on their pass offense. However, they won't have Brock Purdy in this, so that could affect this particular matchup. Cincinnati might be able to stop San Francisco in the pass game, especially if they're generating some decent pass rush here. And then this pass DVOA is going to be a little bit, skewed lower due to the Sam Darnold effect there. So getting into the run stopping, what does that look like? San Francisco 19 in run blocking. Cincinnati 25th in stopping the run. Slightly in the favor there of San Francisco. Should be a little bit better at generating some positive yardage on a run-to-run basis. And then the DVOA, San Francisco number 4, Cincinnati 27th in run DVOA. This is telling me San Francisco is going to be very effective running the ball. I'd expect Christian McCaffrey obviously is going to benefit the most from this. And I would really expect him to dominate on the ground this game. And if we see San Francisco getting bull rushed here, generating a lot of pressure on their quarterback, that could lead to even more dump offs to Christian McCaffrey and some of those underneath targets. So I really like McCaffrey in this particular situation, and I think he's going to be the one person from San Francisco that's viable in any sort of tournament. Kittle might be the other option in terms of just getting the ball out a little bit quicker to some of these underneath routes. All right, let's get into that second game. That's number 5 overall. That's going to be New Orleans and Indianapolis. This is a early game here, so Central Time, it's at noon. This is a 43.5 Vegas game total, as we have seen. 1 point road favorites there for New Orleans as of Friday morning. It's Friday evening. 22.25 team implied total for New Orleans, 21.25 for Indianapolis, as New Orleans is the 1 point road favorite. New Orleans 8th best team implied total, Indianapolis 10th best team implied total. Getting into the New Orleans side, 23rd in offensive pass protection, Indianapolis 22nd in the defensive pass rush. Pretty even there. Nothing to write home about. Should be a typical game for both of those offenses and defenses in terms of sacks. Pass DVOA, New Orleans 23rd, Indianapolis 12. Probably indicative that New Orleans isn't going to be super explosive in their pass game for this particular matchup. Really, who's been benefiting a lot from that? They've been spreading it around. We've seen Michael Thomas get involved. We've seen Chris Olave get involved. We've seen the tight ends have a pretty decent target share there between Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau. So they kind of spread the ball around. Derek Carr not really locking onto one target in his first season there in New Orleans. So keep that in mind. again, 5th best total on the slate. There's not really anybody in this pass protection scenario that's really screaming, hey, we should go get this guy for DFS purposes. Probably fine starting your guys that you normally do in your seasonal leagues. Run blocking, though. New Orleans, number 11. Indianapolis, 27th. Telling us New Orleans should be very positive in terms of run-to-run basis. They should be getting positive yardage. Run DVOA, 20th for New Orleans offense, 18th for the Indianapolis defense. So while New Orleans should be generating positive yardage on a run-to-run basis, it might not be super explosive. These closer matchups, as I said, usually indicate if there's a stud, they will do very well. Alvin Kamara certainly capable of being one of those types of plays where, hey, he's just going to be better than everybody else on this defense. And if he's already generating positive yardage, and over here, if that pass DVOA is not super effective, we could see Alvin Kamara with another one of those 7 or 8 target games and being pretty effective on the ground. He's really the only player from New Orleans I'd be considering for any sort of tournament play outside of maybe Rashid Shaheed being super cheap, but it's not really indicating he should be great in this matchup. As far as the Indianapolis side, number 20 in offensive pass protection, New Orleans 26th. Fairly close there. Not a huge favor for Indianapolis, but it is a slight favor there. Pass DVOA, New Orleans 8th on defense, 15th on offense for Indianapolis. Again, shouldn't be getting a tremendous amount of sacks or anything in this particular game. Indianapolis should be able to avoid that decently in this particular matchup. The pass DVOA is, though, saying, hey, maybe they won't be as efficient as their middle of the pack suggests. It'll be a little bit less efficient than that in this particular matchup. We've seen Josh Downs really take over for this wide receiving core as of the last 5 or 6 weeks, and Pittman's always in play there, and those are really the only pass game options that you're interested in for Indianapolis. They're run blocking in Indy. Number 9, New Orleans, number 11 in stopping the run. Pretty even there. Indianapolis, number 6 in the run DVOA. New Orleans, 13th. A little bit of a favor there for Indianapolis's run defense. Again, that's indicative that Indianapolis be okay moving the ball. They're not going to be super great, but they should just be effective in sustaining drives against this New Orleans defense. Should be a grind them out type of game if New Orleans is going to be running the ball pretty effectively and okay in the pass game, and Indianapolis just slightly above average for most of their matchups. The interesting thing is these teams play very fast, so we should get a lot of plays here, and if they're being not highly efficient, we should see some but not behind the 8 ball, so to speak. We should see sustained drives here and be very quick. Because of this, we could see this Vegas game total actually shoot out. This is kind of one of those things where, I don't know, what do we want to play? Surprise? Like, this might be one of those surprise shootout games where these are very sustained drives, very quick pace, and we see this game end up hitting, New Orleans 30, Indianapolis 27, something like that. I wouldn't be shocked to see that based off of the pace of play info and just the way that these offensive things are shaping up. If you can place prop bets, I can't here in Minnesota, but if you can, I would actually bet the over on this particular Vegas game total. It's going to be close, and both of these offenses should be okay moving the ball, and they play very fast. So that's, to me, way higher than a 43.5 Vegas game total. Anyway, let's get on to the next one, which is Houston at Carolina. And then we got one more that's tied for 5th on the slate. Houston, Carolina, battle of the top 2 picks in this last year's draft. So we got number 1 pick, Bryce Young, going against number 2 pick over there in Houston, which was CJ Stroud. Should be a very interesting one here to see those two go at it. Again, 43.5 Vegas game total, tied for 5th on the slate. Houston actually 3.5-point road favorites. That gives them a 23.5 team implied total, which is 7th best on the slate. Carolina at 20 team implied total, 14th best on the slate. Getting into the Houston offensive pass protection, number 10, Carolina 19th in that defensive pass rush. Offensive pass DVOA for Houston, number 5. Carolina, number 18 in the pass DVOA. This is already in the favor of Houston's pass defense. They should be very effective in the pass game here. Decent amount of time to throw, and they should be explosive. The other thing to take into consideration is that Carolina is just absolutely decimated on defense in terms of injuries. They're getting smacked around. So this 19 and 18, it's probably going to be a lot of backups in there, and Houston's only getting a little bit healthier on their offensive line. I think this is an absolute smash spot for Houston's pass game to be very effective. I don't mind Nico Collins. I don't mind Robert Woods in this. Tank Dell's coming back, but we also have Noah Brown in there. But I would say Nico Collins could be a big beneficiary here. Should be able to move the ball very effectively in the air and score a lot of points in that direction. I can see why Houston is kind of favored in this matchup based off of this. Getting into the run blocking, Houston number 20, Carolina 17th on defense. That's pretty close. Same at the DVOA. Houston actually really bad at 30th, but Carolina number 32 in that run DVOA. Houston actually might find the run game a little bit easier than they're used to this particular matchup. I don't hate Devin Singletary or Pierce in this particular matchup. Damian Pierce, they should be fine in this. I'm not going to play them in any tournaments, but they should be okay for your seasonal long leagues in this particular week, especially if Houston's driving the ball, being very effective through the air. I wouldn't be shocked to see one of those two running backs get into the end zone in this matchup, and maybe two rushing touchdowns if they're really driving the ball against this Carolina beat-up defense. So keep in mind, Houston, even though they're tied for the 5th on the slate here with a lot of other teams, really I think this is one of the offenses that you can attack in DFS this week and be very successful. Getting into the Carolina side, they're number 11 in the offensive pass protection, and Houston 29th at generating a pass rush. Really, Carolina not taking a ton of sacks, which is surprising considering, or they are taking some sacks, but they're in scenarios where you'd expect it, I guess. Again, this is adjusted sack rate. And Houston 29th in the pass rush, so not getting sacks in scenarios outside of what you'd expect. Carolina 29th in that pass DVOA, Houston 22. Really, Carolina might have some time to throw compared to what they're used to, and maybe they find the pass game a little bit more successful than they're perhaps used to in their other games. The run blocking is unfortunately not very good for them. Houston 14th in stopping the run. Carolina dead last in the run blocking. So taking a lot of negative plays, getting stopped at the line of scrimmage. And Houston seems to be middle of the pack in that regard. So they should be pretty good in terms of keeping Carolina's run game behind the sticks. 22nd for Houston's run DVOA, Carolina 26th. And that's a little bit closer. Carolina doesn't really have any studs in the run game, and it's kind of split backfield now between Hubbard and their free agent acquisition that they had come in, which is Miles Sanders. So I wouldn't expect that run game to be very effective. If they're going to be moving the ball, it looks like it's going to be a little bit better in the pass game in terms of being effective on a play-to-play basis. Carolina, really the pass game, the only one effective in that is Thielen. So wouldn't necessarily be attacking that very aggressively in DFS. Thielen obviously fine in redraft. Probably want to be at weights with Thielen or maybe a little bit under. If Houston's going to be putting up points, though, that might put Carolina into those pass game scenarios. And I guess I wouldn't be shocked to see Thielen with a bigger game if that ends up being the route of the game in Carolina this weekend. All right, let's get into that last game on the tied for 5th highest on the slate, which is Philadelphia going into Washington. Again, 43.5 Vegas game total, tied for 5th best on the slate. Philadelphia, 7-point road favorites, 25.25 team implied total, giving them the 5th best team implied total on the slate. Washington's at 18.25, which is the 22nd best on the slate. Philadelphia's offense on pass, 17th in the pass protection. Washington dead last at 32 in the defensive pass rush, so Philly shouldn't be taking a ton of sacks in this particular matchup. Philly's also 13th in pass DVOA, while Washington's 27th in pass DVOA. Phillies should have plenty of time to throw the ball, not getting harassed in the pocket, and they should be fairly explosive. We've seen A.J. Brown be very good. If you want to kind of get a little bit different in a tournament, hey, maybe this is finally the Devonta Smith week. We've seen him do really well against Washington in the past. He even had I think 7 for 78 or something in an earlier matchup this week or earlier matchup this season. So could be his best game this week, and a really good way to pivot off of probably a popular A.J. Brown play this week in DFS. Getting into the run blocking, it's pretty good for Philadelphia, number 9. Washington 16th, so slightly in the favor of Philly there. Run DVOA for Philadelphia, number 3. Washington, number 14. So, Philadelphia's pass, very good. Their run, pretty good, above average there. So expect Philadelphia to be able to move the ball in this Washington defense and be very effective on it. DeAndre Swift, obviously, in play in this. And then Jalen Hurts as well in the run game, as well as that pass game, could be very good. And really, I didn't mention Dallas Goedert, but we've seen him come on as of late. Will he get targeted? Potentially. If that secondary is so bad, though, it might just go to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith all week, and maybe leave Goddard a little bit wishing that he could garner those targets. But if Washington's secondary is going to be that bad and those wide receivers are going to be open, I'd expect Philadelphia to be very explosive in this with both Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown this week. Getting into the Washington side, they're number 8 in offensive pass protection, which is very surprising considering they take a massive amount of sacks. So seeing that adjusted sack rate for their offensive pass protection at number 8 is surprising. But hey, maybe Sam Howell over there, he's taking a lot of sacks, but they're in scenarios where you would perhaps expect him. Either way, that's a shocking number 8. Makes me want to go double check that all of my cell references are appropriate for this Washington pass protection. Pass DVOA seems a little bit more appropriate there at number 30, so not very good in that regard, so wouldn't expect them to be super explosive in general, especially with Philly's defense. So Washington number 8 in pass protection, Philadelphia number 12. That's pretty even. Pass DVOA, Washington 30th, Philadelphia number 17. Again, wouldn't expect Washington to be very explosive on their pass plays this week. And this is indicative that they'll have time to throw, but Sam Howell does take a lot of sacks. So again, very shocked to see this at number 8. I'll have to double check those cell references, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. It's just interesting. Getting into the run blocking side, Washington number 23 in the red, Philadelphia top 5 at number 5. Philadelphia should be able to keep Washington behind the chains here. Stuffing them at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage should be fairly commonplace this week. And Philadelphia number 1 in the run DVOA, Washington 11th. Again, in the favor of Philly. This defense really should be pretty good against the run and fairly decent at stopping the pass. I wouldn't expect Washington to move the ball very effectively in this type of scenario. And Philadelphia should be absolutely dominant in offense here. So really, Philadelphia, Washington, I see Philadelphia maybe getting ahead of this 7-point line. I know that might shock some people. If you listen to some of the big box DFS stores, they're telling you this is going to be a close game. I'm really seeing something else where Philadelphia should absolutely dominate on offense. Again, they are the away team. Washington may be okay in this pass game, but not very explosive, and then the run game should be pretty poor. I think Philadelphia comes out and absolutely dominates in this particular match, though. So, gonna have some Philly players for sure in my DFS lineups this week, and maybe even their defense, getting Washington here with a ton of sacks. All right, let's move on to the next game on the slate. It actually goes from 5th best, tied for 5th best, all the way to the 9th best game on the slate, which is Minnesota heading into Green Bay. We'll get into that here. Minnesota heading into Green Bay as 1.5-point road favorites. This is a 43 Vegas game total. Again, 9th best on the slate here. That gives Minnesota 22.25 team implied total, which is 8th best on the slate. Green Bay 20.75, which is the 12th best on the slate. Getting into the pass protection for Minnesota, number 14. Green Bay number 8. So they should be a fairly even match here, but Green Bay is slight favorite there to kind of generate some sacks. And the offensive pass DVOA, Minnesota again at 14, Green Bay at 25. That's in the favor of Minnesota pretty heavily, so they should be all right moving the ball in the air, a little bit more effective than they're perhaps used to against this 25th ranked pass DVOA defense. It's good for Minnesota in the pass game. The run blocking, though, is where it gets interesting. Minnesota, number 2 in offensive run blocking, so getting positive yardage. Green Bay, 22, so they're giving up positive yardage pretty frequently. Expect that to continue. Minnesota's run DVOA, number 24, which is not good, but Green Bay, 26. So perhaps Minnesota sees their run game actually be a little bit better than they're used to, or you would expect their run game to be. This is telling me they should be just fine running the ball. Their pass game should be okay moving the ball. Minnesota should be very effective on this and be sustaining drives and getting into those scoring scenarios on offense. So that's going to be good for the touchdown scorers in Minnesota. And really, we've seen that be Jordan Addison and Hawkinson for the most part. All the touchdowns for Minnesota have come in the pass game so far this season. This is probably where they break that streak, though. I think they're going to score a rushing touchdown or two in this particular matchup based off of this, where Minnesota is really getting those positive yardage. Green Bay giving up the positive yardage on the defense and the run game, and then it being an even matchup. We don't really have any studs, I think, in the Minnesota backfield, but they should be pretty good. Sustaining drives, and then, if it's, first and goal at the 2, we should see Minnesota be able to get into the end zone there with a Alexander Madison run or a Cam Akers run. So like Minnesota's offense there to be able to sustain drives. On the Green Bay side, number 19 in offensive pass protection, Minnesota number 7 in the pass rush. Yeah, that's in the favor of Minnesota here. They should be able to get some sacks perhaps on Green Bay in this particular matchup. The pass DVOA, though, slightly in the favor of Green Bay at number 12, and Minnesota's defense at 16. They should be okay in the pass game here. I believe we have Christian Watson out. We do have Luke Musgrave that is unlikely to play in this matchup too. So that's really going to leave Romeo Doubs and Reed there in Green Bay as the main beneficiaries in the pass game. Probably also going to lead to a lot more targets to Aaron Jones in this matchup, so don't be surprised to see that as well. I'm assuming that's where it's going to go, especially if this pass rush is getting after Green Bay. You could see Aaron Jones with one of those 6 to 8 catch weeks this week. Getting into the run stopping, Minnesota number 16, Green Bay 26th in run blocking. That's pretty heavily in the favor of Minnesota's run defense. I would expect Green Bay to not be super effective at getting penetration, positive yardage. Run DVOA, even bigger discrepancy. So Minnesota number 12 on defense, Green Bay 27th. Heavily in the favor of Minnesota. I expect that Green Bay run game to be pretty poor. If Green Bay is going to be moving the ball, it's going to be in the air, and it's probably going to be to Aaron Jones, Jaden Reed, and Romeo Doubs. So those players, all 3 of them, I think are going to be interesting dart throws in DFS. I don't like Aaron Jones' opportunity to necessarily score, but in PPR, like DraftKings, he should be okay. And then Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs, I could certainly see getting the vast majority of that pass game work, and then hitting that 100-yard bonus that you get in DraftKings. I think they'll be all right this week in your redraft as well. All right, now getting into the 10th game on the slate. Again, this is a big slate. We have Jacksonville and Pittsburgh, which is kind of surprising. 2 decent offenses going at it here. Jacksonville at Pittsburgh, like I said, Jacksonville going into Pittsburgh as 2-point road favorites. We have this as a 40.5 Vegas game total. Again, we still have 3 more games, and we're already at 40.5 here. Jacksonville giving a 21.25 team implied total as the 2-point road favorites. That's the 10th best on the slate. Pittsburgh, 19.25 team implied total, 18th best on the slate. Jacksonville offensive pass protection number 15, Pittsburgh 24th. So Jacksonville middle of the pack in terms of adjusted sack rate. Pittsburgh in the red there, so don't expect a ton of sacks on the Pittsburgh defense side in this particular matchup. Pass DVOA for Jacksonville number 10, Pittsburgh number 7. It's a pretty even matchup, kind of one of those where, hey, the studs are going to eat in this. The players that are going to be good in this particular matchup or that are good on this team will do well. Really, we've seen that be Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram so far this season. Getting into the run blocking side, Jacksonville 29th, Pittsburgh 26th. And the run DVOA is also pretty even there at 15 for Jacksonville, 19 for Pittsburgh. What this is telling me is Jacksonville probably not going to be getting sacked a ton, but it's really pretty even matchups for the pass DVOA and the run DVOA. Really, I would expect to see Ingram and Kirk and Etienne really dominate in terms of how Jacksonville moves the ball this week against this Pittsburgh defense. Again, we've seen Calvin Ridley have one good game, one really good game, and then one decent game. And the rest of them have been absolutely abominable. I think just based off of this matchup where it's kind of even, it's going to be more of the same here for Jacksonville this week in terms of how they're moving the ball. It's just going to be the same as what they've been doing and being successful. So Etienne, Ingram, and Kirk are the players that I would be interested in. Probably a one-off scenario based off of this Vegas game total. And again, it's Etienne. I know a lot of people say Etienne. It's a French name. The English way to say this French name is Etienne, not Etienne. So please go out there and correct everybody in terms of how they're saying that name. It's Etienne. Pittsburgh, number 6 in offensive pass protection. Jacksonville, 30th in adjusted sack rate. So Pittsburgh should be able to not get sacked in this particular matchup. Unfortunately for them, the DVOAs are completely flip-flop. So Pittsburgh 24th in pass DVOA, Jacksonville 6th. Don't expect a ton of offensive explosive plays in the pass game based off of this, but they should be okay in terms of not getting sacked. So really it's going to lead to probably more underneath passing in this particular situation. In history, that's usually been Deontay Johnson. And then we could also see Jaylen Warren be very effective there. Pittsburgh did lose their tight end and Pat Freiermuth for a while, so it's really just down to 3 people essentially in the offense if you exclude Robinson. So it's really going to be Jaylen Warren. It's probably going to be Deontay Johnson, and then getting mixed in there should be Pickens as well. It just doesn't look like Pittsburgh should be very explosive based off of this line play report. Getting into the run stopping, Jacksonville 3rd in stopping the run and 6th in the run DVOA. Pittsburgh 24th in run blocking and 28th in run DVOA. Heavily in the favor of Jacksonville's defense and stopping the run. I would be fading Najee Harris. And in this particular situation, just based off of how this is going, Najee Harris unders again are going to smash. I said last week to get the under on Najee Harris's rush yards. I'm saying that once again this week. And those prop bets last week were actually pretty successful. So I'm expecting more of the same here from Pittsburgh. Bad running, fade Najee Harris. All right, let's get on to these last 3 games on the slate, the gross ones. Number 11 game on the slate, Cleveland and Seattle. Who would have thought it at the beginning of the season that this one would be so poor? But here we are. Cleveland heading into Seattle. Seattle 3.5 point home favorites. A 37.5 Vegas game total, and this is only the 11th out of 13 games on the slate at 37.5. Absolutely disgusting. That gives Seattle a 20.5 team implied total. That's 13th best on the slate. Cleveland 17. That's 24th best on the slate. Getting into that Cleveland side, they're number 25 in offensive pass protection, 32nd in pass DVOA. Seattle 16th in pass rush, 19th in pass DVOA. That's in the favor of Seattle's defense here. They should be able to get after the quarterback and prevent Cleveland from having a very effective pass game in this scenario. Really, it's a full fade on any of these Cleveland pass catchers, and for certain, the quarterback in this situation, Seattle's defense could be in play. Getting into the run blocking side, Cleveland number 28 and 18th in the run DVOA. Seattle's actually been very good in the run game. Number 10 at stopping the run, and then 3rd in the run DVOA. I would expect Seattle's defense to absolutely dominate in this particular scenario. I would say their defense is in play. The only issue is Cleveland probably not going to be putting up a ton of plays or opportunities for Seattle to get turnovers, but they should be giving up a low amount of points in this. I would say Cleveland 17 points. probably bet the under on that. I don't like their chances of moving the ball very effectively in this game. Wouldn't be surprised to see them with 6 to 10 points in this particular matchup where they only score twice in this game. Getting into the Seattle side, we got a lot of green here, but unfortunately they're playing Cleveland's defense. So number 9 in offensive pass protection for Seattle. Cleveland number 1 in that defensive pass rush. Absolutely down it there with Garrett. And then Seattle number 6 in pass DVOA. Cleveland number 2. Again, I think Cleveland's defense is really good. They should probably pressure Seattle here in this particular matchup. You're going to need some quicker throws for Seattle. I think that's a little bit of a hindrance for DK Metcalf. It's going to be better for Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's going to be better for the tight ends, I think, in this game are going to, come back to life. And then Lockett, I think, is the other one that will be okay. But really, Seattle's pass game is probably going to struggle a little bit in this against Cleveland's defense. The run blocking for Seattle, number 1 offensive run blocking unit. Unfortunately, Cleveland number 2 in stopping the run. And Seattle's run DVOA is number 19, so they're not, super efficient in terms of how they're running the ball. And Cleveland number 2 overall in the run DVOA, so in the favor of Cleveland on this one as well. So really, Seattle, not super good matchups here on offense. So I wouldn't expect them to be able to move the ball very effectively either. But Cleveland really, really will struggle moving the ball in this. It's just an unfortunate game. I think this is going to be a really low scoring affair. Seattle probably squeaks it out like a 17-10, 20-10, something like that. 17-6. It's probably going to be one of those types of games. Definitely would be betting the under in this Vegas game total. And probably avoiding this entire game in terms of DFS. All right. 2 games tied for 12th on the slate, and if you thought that last game was ugly, these are even worse. So that was a 37.5 Vegas game total. These are 2 points worse, 35.5. 12th best tied for 12th best on the slate. We actually have the Jets as 3-point road favorites over the Giants, and the Jets, that 35.5 Vegas game total, 19.25 coming from the Jets. Not even 20 there. Barely 19. That's 18th best on the slates. New York Giants, 16.25 team implied total. That's 26th. So do the math, 13 games times 2. There's 26 teams. That puts New York Giants dead last in the team implied total department. A lot of red on these offenses. New York Giants 28 and 27th in the pass DVOA. Fortunately for them, New York Giants 31 in that defensive pass rush. They're not getting a lot of sacks either, or at least in situations where you would expect it. They are 15th in pass DVOA there, which is a little bit better than the Jets. They're 27, so Jets probably not going to be very effective passing the ball in this situation, but they might find themselves not getting sacked as often as they're used to. Getting into the run blocking side, the Jets 24th, Giants 31st. These are all red matchups here. Jets 23rd in run DVOA, Giants 30th in run DVOA. If the Jets are going to be moving the ball effectively, it's going to be on the ground, and really we've seen Breece Hall take over that. That's the only player from the Jets I would be interested in playing at all in any sort of DFS matchup. Probably avoiding him in a tournament due to a lack of upside in a matchup like this. But is he certainly capable of ripping off 2 70-yard runs and making it count? Sure, this game environment does suck, though. So wouldn't have him in a lot of my lineups, and certainly wouldn't want to be overweight. Getting into the Giants side, they are 31 in offensive pass protection. The Jets 18th. So I'd expect them to be able to generate some sacks in this particular matchup. Giants 31st in pass DVOA. Jets 10th best. Again, Giants should really struggle on the offensive side here in passing the ball. Not going to be good. They're going to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker. That's probably Wan'Dale Robinson and Darren Waller again, and some dump-offs to Barkley. And that's probably all the pass game can handle this week. The run blocking is almost as bad. Giants 28th in run blocking. Jets 7th in stopping the run. So Barkley should be getting hit behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage very often in this. Run DVOA, Jets, middle of the pack at 17. Jets, bottom of the pack at 31, Giants, bottom of the pack at 31. So really the Giants should be very ineffective on offense. This is a situation where 16, I would probably bet the under on this. If they score, 10, 13, I would say that's about what their cap is in this particular game. Very ugly on both sides. Probably avoid completely in DFS. And finally, the last one, Atlanta and Tennessee. Tied at 35.5 here for both of these teams. Both of these games anyway. 12th best on the slate, again, 35.5. We have Atlanta as 2.5 point road favorites here. Atlanta 19 team implied total. Probably the lowest on the last couple of years in terms of favored to win at 19 team implied total. Usually that's the losing side's total. That is 20th best on the slate. Tennessee 16.5 points. That's 25th best, just ahead of the Giants. All right, Atlanta 26 in offensive pass protection. Tennessee 29th in the pass rush. Atlanta should have maybe a little bit more time to throw the ball and not get sacked compared to what they're used to in this particular matchup. Pass DVOA 20th for Atlanta, 26th for Tennessee. We did see early on Tennessee's pass defense was really just getting blown up while that run defense was super good. So really if Atlanta's going to be passing the ball, they might find themselves a little bit more successful than they've been against most teams. The run blocking for Atlanta, 19, Tennessee 13 in stopping the run. But the run DVOA, 17 for Atlanta, number 4 for Tennessee. I wouldn't expect Algier to be very good in this. He's not really the main back there, but Bijan as well. Probably not going to be super effective. If they're going to be moving the ball in Atlanta, it's probably going to be via the air. I don't hate Drake London in this particular matchup. The other pass catcher, Pitts, okay, probably. Really in this, we've seen the pass game go through Pitts. We've seen it go through Jonnu Smith. We've seen it go through Bijan Robinson and Drake London. So those are the 4 people that you're going to be interested in on the Atlanta side. But such a low Vegas game total, I'm probably avoiding most of it in my DFS lineups for sure. Your seasonal long, you're probably going to be okay with the Drake London. You're probably going to be okay with the Bijan Robinson. And if you're using Jonnu Smith like in a 2 tight end league, he's probably okay as well. All right, getting into that Tennessee side, we have Tennessee number 15 in offensive pass protection, Atlanta 28th in that pass rush, 21st in pass DVOA for Tennessee, 29th in pass DVOA for Atlanta's defense. This is in the favor of Tennessee. I wouldn't expect them to be taking a lot of sacks. The unfortunate thing for them is they don't have Ryan Tannehill, who is responsible for most of these numbers in the game. It's going to be Will Levis starting the game, Malik Willis backing him up. Will Levis took a ton of sacks in college. Atlanta's defense in this, on paper, looks like it's not very good. But again, this is with Ryan Tannehill back there not taking sacks. Will Levis very, very, very much took sacks in college. Does that continue here? I don't know. Atlanta's probably going to be a very popular defense. So if you're playing tournaments, I think Atlanta's an avoid. I could see this just based off of paper. Tennessee maybe not giving up a ton of sacks. Will Levis not taking a ton of sacks in this particular matchup, and that pass game being okay. Who's he going to target? I don't know. A lot of times these guys, when they're backup quarterbacks, they're going to target the one guy that they work with in practice. That's probably not DeAndre Hopkins or Chig Okonkwo. It's probably going to be one of these backup nerds on the Tennessee side, like Phillips. Maybe we see him have a pretty solid game in the pass game, getting those underneath targets. Someone like that, Kyle Phillips, I wouldn't be shocked to see have a better game in this than maybe you'd expect. Getting into the run blocking side, which is probably how Tennessee wants to try to avoid any sacks on the pass game. It's not very good for them. Tennessee 17th in run blocking, Atlanta top 10 at number 10. So should be able to be just fine against Tennessee's offensive run blocking. Tennessee's run DVOA at 14, Atlanta's defensive run DVOA at number 5. Again, in the favor of Atlanta here. Don't expect Tennessee to be very effective on the ground. They're going to have to probably, actually just based off of these matchups, it's probably the run game that's the better of the 2 matchups, unfortunately, for Tennessee. I just don't see them moving the ball. I wouldn't be shocked to see them in that 10 to 13 point range. just a lot of grossness there on the Tennessee side. Unfortunately, for DeAndre Hopkins managers, probably not going to be a great game for him. If you have other options, I wouldn't hate sitting him in this particular week. All right, that's going to do it for the main slate. We got 2 island games for you. Chicago at Los Angeles Chargers, which is Sunday night football. And then we have Las Vegas at Detroit for Monday night football. So 2 NFC North teams here actually in the primetime games. And then 2 AFC West teams, actually. So NFC North, AFC West. Interesting matchups here. So we have Chicago going into Los Angeles. Los Angeles Chargers, 8.5-point home favorites. This is a 46.5 Vegas game total. And that gives Los Angeles Chargers a 27.5 team implied total, with Chicago at a 19 team implied total. Getting into that Chicago side, we see they are 30th in offensive pass protection. Los Angeles number 12 at generating a pass rush, so pretty heavily in the favor of Los Angeles there and generating sacks. Getting into the pass DVOA, Chicago number 26, not very good. Chargers number 28 in pass DVOA. This is actually ever so slightly in the favor of Chicago. Really an even up matchup here where studs are going to eat. Really the only stud in Chicago seems to be... Who? DJ Moore. Yeah, exactly. DJ Moore, Chicago, probably in play in this island matchup. Keep that in mind, but Los Angeles could be getting some sacks there against Badgett. Chicago, number 4 in the offensive run blocking, number 9 in run DVOA. The Chargers, 21st in stopping the run and 23rd in run DVOA. Again, that's a green versus red matchup for the run DVOA in Chicago's run blocking favor on offense. This is really indicative that if Chicago is going to be moving the ball, it's going to be on the ground, and they should be very effective doing that. And then in the pass game, it's going to be strictly DJ Moore. So as an island game, DJ Moore certainly in play, but getting into the run game, I think that's how Chicago is going to attack it in this. We saw D'Onta Foreman be very successful last week. However, I think Chicago is going to be splitting that backfield. I think it's going to be D'Onta Foreman, and it's going to be Roschon Johnson, the rookie there. He should get some run there in the run game, no pun intended. And then if this pass game, if Chicago is kind of under pressure, I could see Roschon Johnson getting 4 to 6 targets in this particular matchup and getting it done via the air there. I don't know what the salary totals will be for Roschon Johnson. I'm assuming he's going to be cheaper than D'Onta Foreman, and I could see them easily being pretty even at the very best in terms of D'Onta Foreman versus Roschon's fantasy points. I think Roschon probably outscores D'Onta Foreman in this particular matchup, especially if the Chargers are going to be up big. Chicago passing a little bit more and being in those passing game situations, that's going to be Roschon Johnson's job and not D'Onta Foreman's. Getting into the Chargers offensive side, number 2 in pass protection versus Chicago, 32nd ranked pass rush. So don't expect any sacks here from the Chicago defense. Pass DVOA for the Chargers, number 9, Chicago 30th. Pass game is wide open. They should absolutely dominate here. Would expect Keenan Allen to be good. Even the deep plays here should be good. So really anybody in this Los Angeles pass game should be good. Eckler is probably going to be fine. Keenan Allen's probably going to be fine. Really, Eckler, I'm not entirely sure if they have a ton of time to throw. He might not be getting targeted a lot, but if he does, it could be certainly downfield a little bit more. But Josh Palmer in an island game matchup, not too bad, especially if you're going to have a captain. Maybe get Herbert in there, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, and the tight end. Bring it back with DJ Moore and Roschon. I don't hate that if you can fit it in. You might be able to maybe get Palmer out of there, put Everett in. He seems to be getting some decent volume. That way you can avoid Eckler, who's probably going to be the most popular person outside of Herbert on the slate. Getting into the run blocking, that's not very good for the Chargers. Number 22, Chicago is 4th in stopping the run, so getting after them at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage pretty frequently. Run DVOA for Chicago, middle of the pack at 16. The Chargers, middle of the pack at 13. So probably a lot of not so great runs, and then maybe some decently explosive plays on the run game there. Not looking at anybody besides Eckler in the run game for the Chargers here. If you really want to get different and hope Josh Kelly, has one of those 7 for 70 and a touchdown games, be my guest, but you're probably lighting your money on fire. Chargers probably take this pretty easily. They're going to be moving the ball very well in the air, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them continue to move the ball in the air because of the run game not being super effective there. And then Chicago really being very effective on the ground and having DJ Moore really light it up against this Chargers defense, I could see being the case. All right, getting into Monday Night Football. The Vegas Raiders going into Detroit. Dome game here. Detroit 8-point favorites here with the 46 Vegas game total, giving Detroit a 27-point team implied total and Vegas a 19 team implied total. Getting into that Vegas offense, they are number 11 on offensive pass protection. Detroit number 7 at getting after the quarterback. Pretty even matchup there, but the pass DVOA is a different story. Las Vegas 28th in the pass DVOA, pretty poor. Detroit top 10 at number 9 in the pass DVOA. This is telling me Vegas might not take a lot of sacks, but they're going to be pretty ineffective in the pass game in terms of their efficiency. Probably going to need some dink and dunks. That's going to lead to maybe some Michael Mayer action here and some Jacoby Myers getting a few additional targets as well underneath here. Unfortunately for Vegas, it gets even worse in the run blocking. They're 30th. Detroit number 6 at stopping the run. So they should be able to be stuffing the run pretty good here. Vegas even worse in the run DVOA at number 32. And Detroit also going back to number 8 here. So Detroit really should be stopping Josh Jacobs here. He's going to be a full fade in this Monday Night Football matchup for me. Not putting him into any of my lineups. He's going to be expensive and he's not going to perform very well. So don't put him in there. You're just going to light your money on fire. He's going to be popular and you're going to gain a lot of leverage on the field by not having him in your lineups, which means you're probably going to be cashing and all the closer to that winning lineup. All right, getting into the defense or Detroit side, they are number 17 in offensive pass protection. Vegas 21st in the pass rush, pretty even there. Sack rate shouldn't really matter. Pass DVOA though for Detroit number 7. Las Vegas still at 21 in pass DVOA. This should mean Detroit should be able to move the ball fairly effectively on the air, not take a ton of sacks, and be pretty good there. So that's probably Amon-Ra St. Brown territory and Sam Laporta territory for Detroit this week. Really, Jameson Williams, we've seen be pretty effective in terms of the times that he is throwing the ball. We've seen him produce at least, so he's really a dart throw in here if he's cheap. Otherwise, I'm not going to be interested in grabbing him. The run blocking side for Detroit, number 13, Vegas 30th. And then the run DVOA for Detroit, number 8, Vegas 28th. I'm not sure what it's going to be for David Montgomery, but it sounds like he's going to be out. Jahmyr Gibbs certainly in play here too. So I don't hate him in the captain spot, especially if Detroit's going to be winning big. Getting him in there as your captain, grabbing some Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Laporta, somewhere in that range. Probably not both of those, but maybe getting one of those guys with Goff. Goff can certainly dump it off to your captain there as Jahmyr Gibbs, and then getting some of those Vegas pieces like a Michael Mayer or Jacoby Myers, who probably aren't going to be quite as expensive as a Devontae Adams. That'll probably be how I attack these island games. If you really want to see how to attack the island games and put a lineup together that scored in the top 100 in these large field tournaments like I did last week or yesterday with the Thursday night game, go look at the Thursday night theory for week 8, really explaining how to read these adjusted line play reports. Anyway, huge slate here. No teams on bye, so longer episode here. Thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully you learned something that you can take with you to build these winning lineups. Really, that's what we're all about here at Zilla Fantasy Elite, giving you some additional information to make a little bit more informed decisions so you can go out and win that bag for you. Take your family out to dinner, take them on vacation, depending on how big those winnings are. If you do take home some tournament winnings, certainly feel free to give me a tweet over at Toddzilla1337 and let me know about those winnings. I love to hear that stuff. And I'm glad that I can help you make more informed decisions. Have a good one, folks. Enjoy your week 8 and go get that bag. Thanks. Bye.